So by now we should know that inflation, or the inflation rate, is a very important concept for the government and for economists to understand. So in this lecture we'll look at how the ABS, or the Australian Bureau of Statistics, actually goes about calculating the inflation rate for the government and for economists to use. So what they do is they calculate what is called the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. And this is the most common form of measurement of the inflation rate. So the Consumer Price Index measures quarterly changes in the retail price of locally made and foreign made consumer goods and services. And so what they do is they take a survey of only metropolitan households. So this includes, for the government in Australia, this includes cities such as Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, and all the other metropolitan households. And they take a basket of around 100,000 goods and services, which represent the highest or the greatest proportion of expenditure of these metropolitan households. So the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, measures quarterly changes in the retail prices of locally made and foreign made consumer goods and services. And this typically represents final goods and services. Okay, so now we know that they survey households, metropolitan households, on a regimen or a basket of goods and services. So this is also called a regimen, or basket of goods and services. And so this represents or refers to the range of goods and services included in the basket whose prices are to be measured, and this includes around 100,000 goods and services. So the ABS then subdivides these goods and services into 11 different categories. So these 11 different categories include food expenses, clothing and footwear, housing contents, so utilities, let's redo that, utilities, electricity, etc. And also includes transportation, tobacco and alcohol, financial, insurance, and education services, which I won't write here, but education, financial, and health. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and another 5 more categories, and they're not essential that you know them, but it helps that you know that there are 11 baskets, or 11 different subcategories in this regimen, so 11 subcategories. And so the government uses this regimen to actually determine where prices have increased or decreased. And similarly, they must use a weighting system. So after they survey these metropolitan households and determines how much these goods and services cost, they're going to weight them according to their relative importance to households. So we talked about electricity as being one of the subcategories. So if electricity goes up in price by 10%, this will be more heavily weighted than, say, clocks, which go up by 100%. So if a clock were to go up by 100%, say from $10 to $20, but electricity goes up from $300 a month to $330 a month, then this will be weighted more heavily in calculation of the consumer price index. And finally, they use a base year to determine the price. So the base year is very arbitrary, so they say set 1990 as the base year for the consumer price index, and all subsequent years are measured according to this base year of, say, 100 index points. So they must have a year which holds 100 index points, and therefore every subsequent year they will alter this index point figure to compare the inflation rate from one year to the next. And so these are the basic characteristics of the consumer price index. It includes or measures quarterly changes, and this is very important that it's quarterly. So the consumer price index comes out every 3 months in a year. So they measure quarterly changes in the retail prices of locally made and foreign made consumer goods and services. So this does include imports as well. And this represents final goods and services. Another calculation of inflation is also known as the PPI, or the Producer Price Index. And this represents, or it measures, intermediate goods and services, or final capital goods and services as produced or as consumed by businesses. But we don't need to know about this as much as we need to know about the Consumer Price Index. So similarly, by the same token, because we know that businesses seek to maximize profits, if their cost of production increases, then this should actually feed into the Consumer Price Index. So we know that Consumer Price Index measures the locally made and foreign made consumer goods and services. So the ABS takes a survey of 100,000 goods and services, divided into 11 subcategories of the metropolitan households of Australia, and they are weighted according to their relative importance to households. And every subsequent CPI is measured against a base year. And what they use is they use this idea called a chain volume measure. So they use the base year as a sort of guide, and then they build on the base year as a guide. So that is basically how they calculate the inflation rate. It is not necessary for this course to understand or to calculate inflation using figures, but it is necessary to understand how they calculate inflation. So to recap, they measure quarterly changes in the retail prices of locally made and foreign made goods and services. They take a survey of 100,000 goods and services, subdivided into 11 subcategories of metropolitan households, and they weight these households, or weight these goods and services, according to the relative importance to these households. And they base the calculation of inflation, or the index number, according to a base year.